Hello, and welcome to another episode of Sidebar with Mike. And it's not the vinyl collection series. I know I said that was going to be the thing from now to a little while, but it just so happened that I completed, quote unquote, completed a discography for a certain artist, and I wanted to cover that as opposed to bringing it up in the vinyl collection series. And if you've seen the title, you already know what it is. Cody and I recently did an Album Fight Club episode on Van Halen, and we specifically talked about Van Halen 1 in 1984. And of course, those are the prolific David Lee Roth era Van Halen records. One would argue, although some would put others higher up than others. At the time we did that episode, I only had two of Van Halen's records on vinyl, that being 1984 and Van Halen 1. I should say the Roth era. I do have 5150 on vinyl, but I'll talk about that in a second. And so since then, I've been re-listening to Van Halen again, rekindling my love for Van Halen. I was like, you know what? I just really want all the Roth era records on vinyl. And it just so happened that earlier this week, I was able to do that. So I got all six of the Roth era records. Now, some Van Halen fans may argue that, oh, there's a seventh, and that would be A Different Kind of Truth, which they released, I believe, in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. It was Roth coming back to the band. Michael Anthony was out in favor of Wolfgang Van Halen, which is Eddie Van Halen's son. I'm not counting that one. The reason I don't count that one is because, frankly, I'm not really interested in that one. It's not really Van Halen to me. I know it is Van Halen. It's them returning to make another record, but like, are we really going to put it beat for beat with all the other six records they made at the time period? It's not true Van Halen unless you have Eddie, Alex, Michael, and David Lee Roth. Now, if you got Haggar in there, it's Van Hagar. It's called Van Halen, but it's Van Hagar. Like, let's be honest. So what I'm going to do here is rank the Van Halen, David Lee Roth era discography. Like I did with Metallica, Slayer, etc. I'm just going to showcase the vinyl, talk about where I would place these in terms of rank, and we go from there. Partially because this is David Lee Roth. One, I just prefer the David Lee Roth era. Nothing against Sammy Hagar, but I just prefer Roth era Van Halen. The second thing is that I don't own really any other Van Halen records other than these six. Like I said, I do have 5150. The third is that, like I said, I don't think any of the Van Hagar era records would be above these six except one, which is in fact 5150. I'll actually point out where that one would fall in this ranking. As far as the others are concerned, for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, OU812, and Balance, they're below all six of these, as well as Van Halen 3. Van Halen 3 is probably my least favorite out of all of them. Nothing against Gary Cherone, but like, it's not that good. I'm just going to be honest. So this is Roth era Van Halen. Just six records, obviously, as I mentioned. And so let's just start from the bottom and work our way up. So at the bottom, I do want to point out, though, that these six records I do think are anywhere from great to like masterpieces. I do think this last record, the bottom record I'm about to talk about, it's good. It's got great moments. Overall, I think it's just good. And the reason why is because Diver Down just has way too many covers on it. You know how I feel about covers. If you've listened to any Album Fight Club episode, a lot of them I talk about my sort of dislike for bands doing covers on their studio releases. I'll talk about later how I don't have an issue with that on some releases. But in the case of Diver Down, this really just feels like they were hitting a quota. Like, hey, the studio wants another album, so let's just figure something out. But that's not to say that this record's bad. What's really great about this record are the moments where it's not covers. A lot of the non-cover stuff is pretty excellent. And what's funny about Van Halen, and you'll notice this if you own any of the vinyl, if you look at the track listing, which you can see up top here, none of the Van Halen albums have their track listings in order. And it's very strange that that's the case. But as you can look here, Where Have All the Good Times Gone, Little Guitars, Hang 'em High, that's not the track listing, right? And so I'm actually going to pull out the vinyl for all of these, because in some cases, I don't remember exactly where tracks fall. With the case of the top two, I do. But for this one, I'm going to pull it out. And I also want to briefly talk about Van Halen's band pictures, their band photographs, because they got some pretty great ones. So here's the Diver Down era band photograph. Something about Van Halen is corny and cool at the same time. I mean, look at Alex Van Halen's shirt. Like, this sort of striped, he kind of looks like Waldo, but he's also kind of rocking it, if you know what I mean. Like those glasses are killing it right now. Um, Here's the other side of the inner sleeve if you want to see it. A lot of different images from them. But like I said, Diver Down, it just kind of feels half-assed. I hate to say. A lot of the moments on here just feel like seat fillers. Which is strange because they were at a time in their career where they were about to make one of their biggest records ever. So it feels really odd that they just kind of like throw this one together with a bunch of covers. But basically, no, that's the second side. So again, I got to pull out the vinyl for all this stuff. So we're going to put that there. Track listing wise. So you begin with Where Have All the Good Times Gone? Good song, right? Don't hate it. You get to Hang 'em High, though. Hang 'em High is one of the best moments on this record, and it's a Van Halen original. And you start putting two and two together and realize, oh, the Van Halen originals are pretty great. Cathedral, fun little, thing, fun little ditty, as it were. Nothing amazing. When it comes to Eddie Van Halen solos, you'll see much later that there's just better ones. Secrets, fine. Intruder is just an intro to Oh Pretty Woman, and Pretty Woman, it's a good cover of that song, but it's not anything like super mind-blowing. It's fine. Do I prefer it to the original? Probably, but that's not to say that like I'm jazzed for it. I think they did better covers of other songs, which we'll get to. You flip the side too. Again, another cover, Dancing in the Street. And it's a fine cover of Dancing in the Street. I have no problem with the cover, but you'll realize here that we're talking pretty much just strictly about covers. Little Guitars is the next two tracks because there's the intro and then the track itself, Little Guitars. Used to be one of my favorite Van Halen songs. As I've gotten older, it comes across more corny to me than like cool. I will say that intro to Little Guitars is pretty amazing. It's actually a pretty great Van Halen solo intro, Eddie Van Halen solo intro. Big Bad Bill, like probably my least favorite moment on the record. Now, I would like to say that their father plays clarinet on this thing, and he plays it very well. And it just goes to show how like musically talented the Van Halen family was. Not only do you have Eddie on guitar and Alex on drums, but then they throw in their father, and he's like rocking the clarinet of all things. It's pretty amazing. The song itself, the cover itself, it's fine. It's okay. Not a huge big fan of it. Full Bug, Happy Trails. Like by this point in the record, I'm just kind of like, okay, right. Happy Trails in particular. It's like, was this really necessary? Was this something we needed to include? It's fun, it's cute, but it's not anything amazing. And other than like, I would say Hang 'em High, there's nothing really amazing on this record. Maybe the Little Guitars intro is pretty great. But as far as a record is concerned, definitely my least favorite. Like I said, feels like quota filling, feels like we just have to make the studio happy, and so this is what we're going to do. And so because of that, Diver Down is at the bottom. And pretty firmly at the bottom. I think it doesn't even come close to the next record, and of course, the ones that go above that. So we're out of the territory of like tons and tons of covers. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, this next record doesn't have any covers on it. It's all original material. But in spite of that, Fair Warning is kind of the one where the original material doesn't do it as much as all their other material would. I will like to say, though, I think this record's great. We jump from Diver Down, which is just like, it's okay, to this one's like good. It's very strongly good. But as with all the Van Halen records, the backtrack listing is not in order. Although Mean Streets is the first song. The second song is Dirty Movies, though, so not quite in exact order as it should be. So we're going to pull it out. A lot of people claim that this is Van Halen's darkest record from the Roth era. I mean, I'm inclined to agree just because of the subject matter they're talking about. But it's not like super dark. It's talking about some violent things, but it's not anything that would make you clutch pearls. Pretty good band photo here. I really like Eddie's hair. Just get a little kick out of it. Then they've got this little quote on the back on a wall. I don't know, weird. But as far as the record is concerned, it opens with Mean Streets. Now, fantastic intro to the song. Mean Streets, the song itself, is pretty great. I think it's pretty iconic as this song goes, or as this album goes. So it's actually one of my favorites on the record. Dirty Movies, it's the whole vibe of like, oh, this album's so dark. Oh, it's so crazy. They're talking about dirty movies and like pornographic material. And it's like, yeah, but it's still got Van Halen charm to it. It's still Van Halen doing Van Halen. So to me, it's not anything like super crazy. Center Swing, great track. Love Center Swing. Really love the energy on it. It's very much swing, like fast swing beats. By far and away, though, my favorite song in this record. Hear about it later. Dude, that song is so good. And that cowbell, like, interlude in the middle where Alex is just hitting the quarter notes on the cowbell and Michael's doing his little bass riffing, like, oh, I play that song every time just to get to that moment. And everything around that moment's great as well. So it speaks to how good that song is. Easily my favorite on the record. You flipped it over in Unchained. Apparently, this was like a really popular Van Halen song. I don't really like this song that much. It's fine. I think it's, it's passable. It's good. But it's one of my least favorite songs on this record. I really don't like the chorus and the approach of it. Just the way Roth sings it, just kind of strange. But not to say that it's bad. Push comes to shove, though. Push comes to shove. I love how slow this song is. How quiet, slow, plodding, just like sort of moves at its own pace. Love it for that. So This Is Love. Good song. Again, nothing much for me to say about it. One of the more okay moments for me, but still good. And then you get the Sunday Afternoon in the Park, and people apparently don't like this. Like, it's too like weird. It's too like mushy and swampy and sludgy, and like, I love Sunday Afternoon in the Park. If you've never heard it, it's another sort of like Eddie Van Halen feature with Alex is there as well. But it's like one of those Van Halen solos where I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I don't really know what he's doing or the sounds he's making, but it's just kind of cool to listen to. And then you close with the raging One Foot Out the Door, very fast, very plodding, and that solo that Eddie gives at the end is pretty crazy, all things considered. So it's a good record. For a lot of people, it's higher up than number 5. For me, though, I think the next 4 records are just strictly better. There's more songs on them I like. There's more moments on them I care for. But that's not to say anything against this record. So, fair warning, very good, but still in the bottom half of the Roth era records for me. Number 4. And what's crazy about this one is that they wrote this thing in less than a year, and that would be the follow-up to their first record. This is Van Halen 2, of course. The idea that they wrote this in less than a year is pretty mind-blowing to me. Now, is it anywhere near as good as Van Halen 1? No, of course not. Right? Van Halen 1, not to spoil it, but that thing's a masterpiece. This is not a masterpiece, right? But it's still pretty impressive that this thing was made in less than a year after the first record came out. Some of the songs on here I adore. One in particular that I'll talk about might be one of my favorite Van Halen songs. So as opposed to a band photo, they have like band photos. We've got Alex and Roth on this side, and then Eddie and Michael on the other side. So they didn't go with a band photo this time for whatever reason. But they still allow themselves to be present on the packaging of the record. So this record opens with You're No Good. Good song. Again, not super crazy for me, not anything magical, but it's fine. But track 2, dude, Dance the Night Away. Like I said, that's one of my favorite Van Halen joints. That intro, again, the cowbell comes back, and the cowbell is just a beautiful thing when Alex uses it. That cowbell intro into the riff that Eddie plays to open the song, just the sound of it, right? It just captures something that's so magical. It sounds glorious. And of course, the whole song sounds glorious. And the chorus is so catchy. You sing along to it every single time. And I love how, dance the night away. Like that guitar noise. I'm bad at mimicking it because I'm not very good vocally, but you just got to hear it. Like the way the guitar call and responses, the chorus being the call, the guitar being the response. It's so good. Like the sound of it is so perfect. I absolutely adore that song. One of my favorites. Somebody Get Me a Doctor. It's fun. Very boisterous, very loud, very cool song. Bottoms Up. Tons of fun. Especially that sort of like scatting part where he's like, my baby, bottoms up. Like it's just a lot of fun, right? And that's what you come to Van Halen for. At least that's what I do. If I'm coming to Roth era Van Halen, I'm here to have a good time. And this record makes me have a really good time. Out of Love again, fun. Very riff jumpy, if that makes any sense. Like the riff is very like jumpy and poppy. Fun stuff. Very cool. Flip the record over, and Light Up the Sky comes on. Another fun track. Probably my least favorite on the album if I had to pick one, but it's still good. I don't hate the song. It's just probably the one I'd throw at the bottom if I had to. Spanish Fly, a crazy acoustic solo from Eddie Van Halen. Just like kind of wild that he's doing that. As good as Eruption? No, of of course not, but as a follow-up to Eruption on an acoustic guitar, yeah, pretty impressive. Dead or Alive, dude, what a chorus. Those gang vocals with Michael Anthony on that chorus, just absolutely awesome. Like stellar. Hits the roof and like you keep going. You fly right through the roof. That's how good it is. Women in Love, I really feel like this song is underrated. I just don't hear a lot of Van Halen fans talk about it, but I love this song. The chorus in particular, another moment of like Michael Anthony and the others like doing those gang vocals on the chorus. So good. One of my favorite choruses. And then finally, to close out the track, you get beautiful, or close out the album, you get Beautiful Girls. A lot of fun. Very fun way to end the record. And a very fun way to end a record that might be some of the most fun Van Halen sounds like they ever had in the studio. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but you just feel the energy of this. Obviously, the first record has an unparalleled energy that we talked about on Album Fight Club, but for this record to come out once again at the time that it did, shortly thereafter doing the stuff that they did on the first record, and to follow up with a record that's as good as this record is, very impressive. A lot of bands can't pull that off. They need 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. They do it in less than a year. So that speaks to the quality of Van Halen and the time period that they were in. Now, 5150. I do own the record. I'm not going to bring it out and show it because that's not what the point of this is. 5150 would probably go here. I'd probably put it between Van Halen 2 and the next record I'm about to talk about. There are some days where I would flip the next record I'm about to talk about in 5150. So 5150 would be number 3, and this next record would be number 4. Today, though, having just re-listened to all these records recently and dissecting them again, I would put Women and Children First at number 3 as opposed to number 4. 5150 is amazing. I love it. It's great. It goes bar to bar with a lot of the Roth era stuff, but it's not quite these next 3 records. And Women and Children First, I think, is fan-freaking-tastic. Amazing. And in fact, has one of my favorite band photos ever. This band photo on the back of the record is so good. And I can't really explain why. It just like has a kinetic energy to it. And apparently this was a very hard photo shoot, like a very daunting, didn't go well photo shoot, but man, the product you got out of it was so good. Man, it's just so kinetic. It's so fun. It's so good. It perfectly captures the spirit and energy of Van Halen, and I absolutely adore it. But what about the material on this? So I do also want to point out this is the version that has the poster. I'm not going to pull the whole thing out because it's huge, but it's the poster of David Lee Roth shirtless against the chain link fence. And I asked my mother-in-law if she would like it, and she said no. And I asked my mother if she would want it, and she said no as well. So I guess I'm just going to keep it in the vinyl casing because no one wants it. I mean, I'm not going to hang it up. What am I going to do with it? Side 1 of this record is literally flawless. You open with "And the Cradle Will Rock." Amazing. Perfect Van Halen song. And that intro that I'm pretty sure is on like a keyboard, if I'm not mistaken, and yet it's making that noise. Perfect intro, perfect opening track. Everybody Wants Some. My only gripe with this song is that it has 2 exclamation points, not 1, not 3. It has 2. And I hate, as an English professor, I hate when people do that, but Everybody Wants Some is so good. Like, yeah, the whole tribal drum thing and him doing the Tarzan, calling, it's like, it's a little hokey, but it still works for me. I still love it. Fools, very underrated track. Love Fools, love the energy of it. But dude, Romeo Delight, another one of my favorite Van Halen songs. That pre-chorus thing they do, where it's like the like if you listen to the song, you know what I'm talking about, bro. That the thing that hits when that moment happens, it's one of those take a piece of furniture and chuck it at somebody moments. Like such a primal response to that, such a primal energy, and on top of it, the whole song's fantastic. It's amazing. Like I said, side 1 of this record is flawless in my opinion. And then you flip it over and it keeps up the energy with Tora Tora and Loss of Control. Tora Tora is basically just a fancy intro. It's separated, but it's just an intro for Loss of Control. I've heard people say they don't like Loss of Control. I have no idea why. I freaking love Loss of Control. Just like the speed of it, the sound of it, that opening riff Eddie does when the song comes in, just like yo, I don't know how fast I'm going in my car. I need to be going 50 miles faster than whatever I'm going now to like match what this feeling is. It's absolutely amazing. Then the record kind of dips. I say kind of because it's not bad, but you know, take your whiskey home. It's a fun blues track, but it's not nearly as good as everything that just came before it. Could This Be Magic? A fun acoustic track, not nearly as good as everything that came before it. And then In a Simple Rhyme, good closing song. It's not great, but it's good. But the first half of this thing, dude, like it matches Van Halen 1 and 1984 energy for me. It is that good. So if you haven't listened to Women and Children First recently, I advise you revisit it and just the first side. I mean, obviously the whole thing is great, I think, but go revisit that first 4 tracks. They are absolutely stellar. And if the entire album were as good as those first 4 tracks, it might be over my next pick. It might actually be number 2. Now, if you listen to our Album Fight Club episode, you know what these 2 records are. You know how they fall, because I spent a lot of time, as did Cody, you know, talking about why I would put one of these records over the other. But admittedly, I mean, you can't really fault 1984 for anything on it. It is absolutely just incredible. And the idea that after Diver Down, which, like I said, a very washy record for me, it kind of feels paint by numbers. It kind of feels like quota filling. They come out with this thing. It's like Diver Down happened just so they could like reassess and go, okay, we're going to just make a record full of covers so that we can come with this thing. And boy, does this thing come out of the gate swinging. I mean, this record is phenomenal. Just to take it out of its casing and show off the imagery again. And because on all their records, they like to not do anything in order. This is the band photo. Not one of my favorites, right? You've got this like checkered pattern, and the guys, I mean, they look cool, as they always do. Alex in particular looks really cool. But the other side, I don't even really know what I'm looking at, honestly. It kind of looks like bullet casings or something. I don't know, right? I'm sure some Van Halen fan will correct me on what that thing is. I just don't quite know. Now, as far as the songs on this thing are concerned, their biggest hits are on this record. I mean, you open with 1984, a fun little intro to Jump. It's Jump, dude. Panama. It's Panama, dude. Like, Jump and Panama are 2 of their biggest songs, and Panama in particular, like, maybe their best radio hit, best radio single, like best single, maybe. Now, if you've watched the Album Fight Club or listened to the Album Fight Club, you know my favorite track is on this record, so I'm not inclined to say Panama is my favorite, but it's pretty good. Top Jimmy, love Top Jimmy, especially that sort of like guitar sound on it. Drop Dead Legs, probably my least favorite song on the record. It just doesn't do a lot for me, especially when it's surrounded by such good material. You flip this record over and you get that drum intro for Hot for Teacher, and boy, I went off about it on the Album Fight Club episode, so I won't go off about it again, but Jesus Christ. That drum intro is so iconic. It's so good. And even if the first 5 seconds are just a car engine, whatever, dude, it sounds so cool. I like to think that it is Alex just playing the drums and like matching it to that noise. And since this record has come out, you can watch YouTube videos of people matching that noise on Tom. So like, even if it was a car, it's replicatable. Hot for Teacher is by far and away my favorite Van Halen song, like across all their albums. Just so good. Everything about it. I'll Wait, a very ballady track, and yet I just love the energy and the sound of it. It's beautiful. Girl Gone Bad, very fun, sort of fast, galloping track. And then House of Pain's a good closer. But, you know, House of Pain, Drop Dead Legs, those songs are just good. Every other song, I would argue, is pretty great, especially, you know, Panama, Jump, Hot for Teacher. So it's no reason or no wonder why a lot of people say this is their favorite Van Halen record. I can't really fault them on that when some of the tracks on here are some of the best material Van Halen ever did. But for me, at least, I'm struggling to put this back in. For me, at least, it just falls at number 2. And so with that, 1984, it's really, really good. But it's not quite number 1. Number 1 for me, it's pretty obvious at this point, I think is quite possibly the greatest hard rock record of all time, and that would, of course, be the opening Van Halen 1, the first album they ever came out with. One of the greatest debuts of all time, Like I just said, one of the greatest hard rock records of all time, probably my favorite. I wouldn't, I'm not going to say it's the greatest ever, but it's definitely my favorite hard rock record of all time. Because, dude, the energy on this thing is so unmatched. It's so unparalleled. It is absolutely insane that this record, these four guys just come out of literally nowhere and just drop one of the greatest records ever. And they changed the whole dynamic of guitar music. I mean, Eddie Van Halen on Eruption, which we talked about on the episode, it literally changes everything. And the idea that it happened on the first record, like record 5 or 6, sure, that you can do something crazy because you've got the experience. This dude comes out of the gate with Eruption, and nothing was ever the same. You open with Running with the Devil. Excuse me, I was blanking for a second. Running with the Devil, such a good opener. The bass riff, the whole shouting of it. Then you get to Eruption, amazing. You Really Got Me as a cover, and I know I hate covers on studio albums, but I don't care because this cover of You Really Got Me is so goddamn good. It's so good. Everything about it's perfect. Let me just go ahead and I know I'm going off here because I just love this record so much, but let me go ahead and pull it out. Very, basic album band imagery here. It's not my favorite, right? But forget that, right? We're not here for that. We're here for the music on this thing, which is stellar, unbeatable, and perfection. So that's side 2. So You Really Got Me, again, amazing. Ain't Talking About Love. My God, dude. Like you would think that at a point they just lose steam on this record, and they never really do. Ain't Talking About Love is fantastic. Such a good song. I'm the One, that intro that Van Halen leads with, it sounds like it's faster than it is, and it's got more notes than it does, and it doesn't, right? It's pretty simple, and yet it sounds so complicated and so like ridiculous to play. Side 2, Jamie's Crying. Amazing, amazing, amazing. One of my favorite slow Van Halen songs. And of course, Wild Things, kind of pulled from it. Atomic Punk. Awesome. That sort of like scratchy, acid soaked sound of it is amazing. Fear Love Tonight sounds like they literally recorded it live. Like they just had a live session, recorded it in front of audience, and they took the audience out. That's how good this record sounds. That's how good they sound on it. They literally sound live. The energy of it is literally unmatched. Little Dreamer, probably my least favorite song, but that's not saying much. I would still say it's like a really, really good song. And it is a really, really good song. It's just, it's a little slow. It's a little drop in the energy, but that's fine. You get Ice Cream Man after that. Another cover, but I don't care. It's amazing. And On Fire to close, amazing, awesome, heavy track. It's literally perfect. It's you're looking at a perfect vinyl record in my hands right now. I would not change anything about it. I think it's literally perfect. I think it was a paradigm shift, and every single moment. I know I said something like Little Dreamer is not, super my favorite or whatever, but every moment on this thing is so fantastic. Everything about it is wonderful. And it's one of those records that like this is a Trapped on an Island or Abandoned on an Island record. That sort of anecdote you get of like, hey, if you were on a desert island and you had nothing but one record, what would you choose? I wouldn't choose this one first, but if someone said, hey, you have to listen to Van Halen 1 the rest of your life, I'd be like, okay, fine. It's that good. It's that amazing. And by far and away, it's my number 1. 1984, very, very good, especially like the really good moments on it or like some of their best. But it doesn't quite match bar for bar how good Van Halen 1 is as a record. And so because of that, it's my number 1. So I know that was a lot of rambling. I know that was a lot of just like tracks firing at your face, but I'm a huge fan of Roth era Van Halen, and Van Hagar is good too. But man, the energy of Roth era Van Halen was something else. And I really wish they could have settled their differences and given us more. I'm not talking Different Kind of Truth, right? The sequel to 1984, right? 1986 or whatever. Instead, they go with Sammy Hagar, and I understand why, and I get why, but like there's this alternate reality where David Lee Roth stayed in the band and they all were like really good friends, and they released like 6 more records that were of this quality. That's a parallel universe I'd like to visit sometime. Of course, I'll probably never get the opportunity, but it's great stuff. And luckily we have what we have. So thanks for joining me on this. I know it was a brief stopgap in the whole vinyl collection series, but I'm going to get back to that soon. I just wanted to talk about these records because I have them, and it's an opportunity to talk about the entirety of Van Halen's discography as opposed to just 1984 and Van Halen 1 like we did on Album Fight Club. So, again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.